So today we're looking at my 1965 version of the old Settlement Cookbook. I used to have a 1920s version, but I lost that in the divorce. I'm still not sure why, because he didn't really cook, but I missed some of the more interesting things like the possum recipes. This one does not have that. So one of the things I do find interesting is that you've got the table of contents actually on the inside of the cover, and as well as oven temperatures and more standard weights and measures. And we've got the equivalents and substitutions here. And then this one, the previous owner had pasted in newspaper clippings with recipes. And there are a few here at the front as well as the back. I find these little girls adorable. I also find him using the Way to a Man's Heart as the subtitle of this book. And this is how it's organized. You have the different categories, and then they're listing like the subcategories. So we're like working in the breads. You've got yeast breads, and then within the yeast breads, you've got loaves, rolls, coffee cakes, etc. And then you've got your quick breads and those varieties. So we are looking at, on page 77, Turnovers, or Tiepfel? Is that pronounced correctly? I don't know. I'm assuming it's German. But it says make a pastry, and it gives some examples. We're going with the Kuchen dough on page 73. And it's roll on floured board until 1/4 inch thick. If using the Kuchen dough, wait until after first rising to roll out. Cut into 3-inch squares. Place 1 tablespoon of jam or any desired Kuchen filling. Pages, and it has those. Lift the corners of each square over the filling and pinch together on top and at corners to keep in juice or wet top edges. In squares and hold of 1. Sorry about that. I am just all kinds of fumbled today, and I'm like on my 12th attempt to read this to you. But anyway, hold 1 corner and fold and pinch it in the opposite corner. That is the one I'm attempting. So we'll just skip the rest of that. And then place on greased pan, let rise, bake in a moderate hot oven, 400 degrees, until well done and browned. The Kuchen dough recipe on page 73 is 1 package of dry yeast, which is 2 1/4 teaspoons, since I buy a large package of that. A 1/4 cup warm water, 1 3/4 cups scalded milk, a 1/2 cup of butter, 3/4 cup sugar, a teaspoon of salt, a dash of nutmeg, grated rind of 1/2 lemon, 6 cups of flour, and 1 egg or yolks of 2. I just went for 1 egg. Dissolve the yeast in warm water. To the scalded milk, add the butter, sugar, salt, and a little nutmeg and lemon. When lukewarm, add 1 beaten egg. Stir in the yeast and only enough flour to knead. Knead dough until smooth and elastic. Cover tightly and let rise until doubled in bulk. Cut dough down and form into desired shape and bake. And here it's saying 375, but we did 400 because that's what the turnover recipe said. And then there are some various other versions of Kuchen in this book. So this is everything I need to make the turnovers without the filling yet. I'm going to use some of my homemade preserves for that. So per instructions, I am softening the yeast in some warm water and setting it aside while I start to work on the rest of this. So into my mixing bowl, I put the scalded milk and the butter And I am cutting this into pieces to help it melt a bit better in the warm milk. And then next is the sugar, salt, nutmeg, and lemon zest. And I just put this in my mixer and let it go until the butter was melted and the temperature was down to a lukewarm, where I added the beaten egg and the yeast. Since the recipe did say just add enough dough to get to a kneaded point, I started sifting in about a cup of flour at a time. And when I got closer to the end, I started doing it by the spoonful. And I just let my KitchenAid do my kneading for me. So I just let it kind of run a bit with the bread hook. And this Kuchen recipe made a really pretty soft dough. And I stuck it in the fridge for a few hours since I had some errands to run. And then I just lightly dusted my board with flour. And I did divide the dough in half before I start rolling it out, because this was actually a lot of dough by the time it had doubled. The recipe also had specified that the Kuchen was easier to work when it was cool, and I will say it did roll out really nice and easy when I pulled it out of the refrigerator, and it did still double in size while it was there. And I was making 2 different flavors. So I went with a 3-inch biscuit cutter to cut out the dough for the fig. And then I cut it in these squares for the apple butter filling that I used. When I went to filling it, I first started out trying to moisten the edges and put that recommended tablespoon of preserves in there. That was way too much. There was no way it was sealing. So I dropped down to a half tablespoon and put it in there. And still, it did not want to seal. I think in the end, I probably only got 2 or 3 to actually properly seal. It was, maybe it's because my homemade preserves were too gooey for this. But yeah, I couldn't keep it in. I was very frustrated. But that happens sometimes. Maybe y'all can suggest what I did wrong on that to try to seal these up. And I ended up with a nice bowl of these to take to yet another potluck. But this is what they look like. They kind of poofed up like this, and they were not very pretty. They look nothing like the turnovers we got when I was a child at the local Arby's. They're also nowhere near as sweet. But this is something I really enjoy eating. I'll need to figure out another way to seal these up. And once again, if you're enjoying these videos of me exploring the vintage cookbooks, please like and subscribe. I do find it very encouraging. Thank you.